Hi everyone, this is Audrey Hovhanessian, Associate Director of Assessment at the California State University Office of the Chancellor. Today's tutorial is on identifying eligible participants within academic and student success programs. This includes high impact practices. So key to this tutorial is definitely staying calm. Data can be somewhat cumbersome and sometimes intimidating, but at the end of the day, it definitely points in a great direction on how to build very successful student success programs. Key to staying calm is being transparent and sharing this information with as many stakeholders as possible, all in an effort to demonstrate program impact and effectiveness, to inform program assessment, and to help to build your program capacity in order to scale to large populations of students. Step one in identifying eligible participants includes going to historical campus data. Many of our campuses have spent a long period of time analyzing historical data in different time series analysis to identify student populations who may benefit by participation in student success programs. Other places to look may be potential legislation or policy that's put in place to help serve students. Many of us are engaged in following national best practices and have been looking into and reading research on what other institutions and systems are finding successful. And lastly, many of our 23 campuses have hundreds of existing student success programs. Most of them have a mission statement which clearly identifies eligible participants that they're hoping to participate in their programs. We're going to focus on an example program in this webinar. So the last bullet item, which is the mission statement of our example program, identifies eligible participants as first-generation low-income freshmen. So once you've taken a look at your mission statement, you can then actually use those terms used to identify students to quantify eligible participants. So initially looking at the total campus population, in this example it's about 13,000. We have a couple of CSU campuses at about that total population. Next, our mission statement indicated they were interested in working with low-income students. That brings the number down to 7,891. Next, they mentioned first generation, which again brings the number down. And then finally, they were interested in working with first-time freshmen. So that total number or eligible participants is about 1,722 on that campus. Keep in mind this number will change every year as you see increases or decreases in the populations you've identified in your mission statement or being of interest. At that 1,722, based on the mission statement and the goal of the program, that would be considered the scale. After identifying the eligible participants, it's really good to look at the student demographics of that particular population for that year. So in this case, we encourage student success programs to take into consideration gender, ethnicity, Pell eligibility status, first generation, and other suggestions such as proficiency, things like SAT, high school GPA, lower division units completed. Items to take into account are the percentage in each cohort of each of these categories, and also here at the bottom under high school GPA, focusing on particular populations of interest. So in this example, those students with a 1.5 to 2.4 may have some levels of academic risk, so this particular program may want to focus in on those students. Now, this is really a best case example of identifying eligible participants, but many of our campuses have limitations, such as limited facilities, staff, funding, and so in this example, based on these limitations, the population that we can serve decreases to about 800. Then, if some of the programs or this specific program is voluntary, you may have attrition rates. And that number of actual student participants served by this program, in this example, is reduced to 665. This number accounts for 39% of the total eligible participants which could benefit from this program. Now, don't fret. We are all working very hard. The CSU has just released $20 million in additional funding that can be used towards programs like this to enhance them, to meet the needs of a large population of students. But in the meantime, what we're encouraging is to look at actual participants or a number of the total eligible participants who may need more of a high touch or rigorous aspects of that particular program. Other students who may have high GPA or may not have as many needs can still be served through email or resources, but more at a low touch level. So depending on the different levels of interaction with students, you could actually serve the total population that you've identified. So going back to our data, you see here on the left the eligible participants in comparison to actual participants. Not only do we need to try to serve as many students as possible, in this example, this program was able to serve 39% of the eligible participants, but we need to make sure they are the most in need students that are being served. One of the criticism of student success programs is that whether they're voluntary or opt-in, we tend to see the already motivated, high-achieving students who take advantage of these types of programs. So this is a check and balance to see who exactly was served during this particular year. In each case, what you would do is a comparison to see if there is significant difference or disproportionality between the eligible participants and actual participants. So for example, gender, you see is a bit disproportionate. This particular program, actual participants were actually a high percentage of females. You also see disproportionate amount in some of the areas of ethnicity, first generation status. And since we are institutions of academia, you would definitely want to look to see the percentage of students based on certain measures of academic success. So in this case, high school GPA. This particular program served a large percentage of students between a 3.1 and 3.5 high school GPA upon entrance. So potentially these students may or may not have needed as many services as possibly the 1.5 to 2.4. So potentially this program may want to look into contacting advising centers or other departments across the campus to see how best to recruit students most in need. Now, once that analysis and comparison has been done, you want to revisit your mission statement. Again, this example program said they were interested in serving first-generation low-income freshman students. Based on that previous analysis, either the mission statement needs to be revised or the students most in need to be contacted in a different manner. So if you were going to revise the mission statement based on the actual participants, in this case, the actual students served were pretty high achieving. They were freshmen. They seemed to be a high percentage of Hispanic and female students. If the mission statement and the program is not interested in being revised and following its original mission statement, then each year, whether through data was retrieved through IR or the registrar or some other mechanism, the eligible participants would need to be identified prior to that year's programmed operations. So in this case, you would look again at each of the areas and make strategic decisions of how to recruit either proportionally or based on your mission statement or certain outcomes identified in the program. Many of our programs across campuses, about 44 on 15 campuses, are part of the Academic and Student Success Program, ASSP, and they provide assessment evidence in TaskStream, our online repository. This year, we made a slight adjustment based on responses to the ASSP member survey. ASSP coordinators and program directors asked that under ASSP program statement, if we could include a narrative on the student characteristics and statistics describing the student population best served by the program. and a table such as this one comparing eligible participants and actual participants be placed in every annual assessment cycle under student demographics. So again, this is a comparison between the actual participants to eligible participants to ensure that the students who would most benefit from your program are identified. Now again, ASSP 2014 and 15 has done incredible work. Our 44 programs serve nearly 38,000 students. Our goal for this next coming year is to make sure that we identify those students best served by our programs and increase the number of participants. This concludes the tutorial on identifying eligible participants. Now that you're able to identify which students will most benefit from your program and how much you'd have to increase facilities or staffing to grow to scale, we're going to work on, in our next tutorial, writing SMART outcomes. The acronym SMART stands for specific, measurable, assignable, or achievable, realistic, time-related, or time-bound outcomes. Thank you very much again, and please feel free to contact me for any further questions.